budget 2021 has been touted as the most critical in the history of South Africa. For more on what we should be thinking about, let's bring in our business editor, Xolani Mbanjwa, who's live to us now from Cape Town this morning. Xolani, we say this every year. This is arguably the minister's toughest budget speech yet. But the minister this time around truly is spoiled for choice about where to begin. What should be his priorities?
Good morning, Ayanda. Well, it's quite an important day this morning here in the windy Cape Town. This morning, it's something that we've always said, as you are rightfully, saying that for the past 10 years, all budget speeches have been touted as the most important, but none come more important this time around than this budget speech with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the biggest priorities that the country is waiting on for him is to actually see what he's going to do with the projected revenue shortfall over the next 3 years, which is expected to be in the region of 700 billion rands. That's number one, and it's really critical for the minister to actually tell the country how we are actually going to fund this shortfall in the fiscus. The other issue, of course, is going to be the vaccine rollout. Funding it, how are we actually going to get that money? And there has been, 4 options that have been announced really by the National Treasury that have to do with how and where we get the money to actually fund about 20 to 24 billion rands that's needed to roll out the vaccine. And he spoke about, as the DG of National Treasury, Dondo Mokajane, spoke about raising taxes. There's a possibility there, or borrowing more money, or reprioritizing, as taking from other departments to actually pay off this particular budget, and roll out. And the last one being the most important is, of course, what is he going to do with the issue, the critical issue of the civil service wage bill? As we know, there has been warnings from investors, ratings agencies, and everybody else that he has to do something about the wage bill. It is high, and we heard last year, exactly a year ago in the last budget speech, that he has actually not going to honor that wage agreement. So unions are not happy, and he has to satisfy them one way or the other, because in the MTBPS, he also introduced something that has to do with a wage freeze, something that is definitely going to ruffle the feathers of unions.
Yeah, and in fact, we know as of today, unions like SAFTU are planning a nationwide strike to, tackle the very issues you've just outlined now. But we've also heard, Xolani, a lot of talk about the hippopotamus mouth, right? Rising debt in the face of decreasing revenue. What ought he say about those sticking issues?
Well, that is the big warning that has been sent from the likes of the IMF, the World Bank, and ratings agencies, that we cannot, at this critical juncture, really make the country's budget really make it much bigger when it comes to the amount of money that we actually borrow to actually fund the programs of the government. It's something that is a huge concern, because when you look at the increases over the past couple of years when it comes to the debt to GDP ratio, it's simply unsustainable. So one way to actually deal with that rising debt levels is to actually curb the actual rise, the massive rise in civil service wage bill that we've seen since 2007, Ayanda, rising astronomically when it comes to the average salaries that civil service actually get. When it comes to that particular one of debt, it also is linked to the revenue shortfall that we are going to experience at this particular time around, because, as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on the amount of jobs that are available, and the people who actually pay the taxes have actually diminished and dwindled. The numbers, the tax base is dwindling. So it's something that is quite huge, and as we know, we are still negotiating with the World Bank for another loan. You remember we actually got one loan from the IMF and other development institutions to the tune of 80 billion rands. Now we're looking for more when it comes to the loan, and they are negotiating those terms. It's something that is quite serious, and we're going to hear from Tito Mboweni whether we did get the favorable conditions when it comes to that loan from the World Bank, which we're still negotiating.
Yeah. You know, one of the swords in the side of the fiscus, if you like, has to be SOEs. It's quickly become an incredibly emotive issue too. How does the finance minister begin to negotiate that?
It's actually a very, a tricky one. If there is anybody, that is actually ready for this particular budget speech, is Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. He's been minister before. He's also been the Reserve Bank governor. So when you look, throughout cabinet, he is the one person that is actually ready for today to deliver something that is favorable to all. He is going to disappoint some people. He is not going to, he does not have a magic wand. Some of these things cannot be negotiated away, and he may not have a choice to actually disappoint a lot of people. So it's really critical today that he at least gives something back, and while taking most things away, because we are expecting that government departments are going to get less and less when it comes to their allocations, budget allocations. We saw with the special budget as those critical departments' budgets were trimmed provincially and nationally. So it's something that is, a hot potato, and not only him. He has to deliver on this, but also he has to deliver a budget that is trustworthy, Ayanda, that cabinet can actually sign off on. It's something that is quite difficult, looking at the fact that when he actually spoke about a wage freeze, cabinet has not said much about it. He needs that support because he's not going to do it alone.
Absolutely. Well, as the cliche goes, we'll have to wait and see how he tries to navigate all these things. You've got an incredibly busy day ahead, so let's leave it there for now.